Call the meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a few members that have to leave at 5:30, so Gary has requested that we approve the minutes while we have a full quorum.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 28th.
Okay, so Terry,
Second.
Terry made a motion to approve.
Second.
Jane seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstained.
Abstained. John Souza abstained.
For the 28th?
Yeah,
last
March
week.
28th, March 28th, yeah. Okay. Before we start, I'd like to, there's two things that I'd like to do. I'd like to make a statement, and I'd also, after that, I would like to go over the presentation of the actuals for the last 3 years and the effect that it's going to have on our budget long-term. So, that said, before we begin, I'm going to make a statement and open it up to other members to see if they want to make any comments. Many of us watch or attend school committee meetings. I would like to address some of the comments made during the meetings in order to get on the record our reply, or my reply anyways. One, the FinCom is overreaching and questioning the school budget. The methodology we use is the same for each department. The school budget equals over 50% of the town budget, so of course we're going to spend more time on it. We look at differences plus or minus from prior year and actuals in order to understand the reasoning for ourselves and for the viewing public. The role of the Finance Committee, as stated on the town website, is as follows. The Finance Committee should promote a budget process that results in a clear and meaningful budget document with analysis, explanations, and justifications for its recommendations that can present voters with a clear picture of town government, what it is, where it is, and where it is heading. We are going to fulfill our obligation regardless of protests of the school committee. We will not rubber stamp any department. Second thing, the past history of the school budget has been that the town administration has offered 3 to 3.5% increase in budget year over year. The school committee usually requests 4 to 5% increase in budget year over year. This usually creates a conflict between the parties. School committee members make statement that the town has to decide what type of schools we want, have as if 1.5 to 1.5% difference in growth will cause the performance of the Dartmouth school system to significantly deteriorate. This is political hyperbole. It is meant to get parents upset. It is creating a crisis when none exists. Trying to make these residents feel guilty and insinuating that if we do not get every penny they want from the town, that it is not supporting the school system, when in fact the town is spending over 50% and $50 million on the school. I have been involved in budgets and actuals and financial reporting for over 46 years. And I can tell you that when you have a $50 million budget, you have a lot of wiggle room to make up for a 0.5% or 1.5% difference in a budget want list and a budget need list. Thirdly, at last town meeting, a member of the school committee presented an amendment requesting taking $99,000 from the reserve fund and adding the money to the school budget. This decreased the reserve fund by 20% and increased the school budget by 0.2%. During the school presentation, it was stated that if we did not get the money, the school committee would have to cut positions when in fact they had almost $2 million in student choice account. To me, this is not true transparency. And had it been disclosed at the town meeting vote, would have been much different. The reserve fund is normally $500,000 in order to give the FinCom the ability to help certain departments help if they had run into a problem that was not anticipated. In addition, the school department requested a reserve transfer, which we gave, for $120,000 for a repair of a leaky roof, which we did not understand why it was not anticipated. We currently have $85,000 left, and we have a request fund for an emergency pipe replacement at Southworth Library, and we do not have enough money left to fully fund it. Thank you. I wanted to get this on the record, and if anybody would like to say anything on the committee, please.
Yes, I would. This is in regards to the school transportation. As you know, I've been concerned about our rising costs for school transportation. With that said, I'm proposing that the school department investigate and develop a fee structure for bus service. I have a sampling of bus fees charged by other communities. The other communities are Newton, Northampton, Reading, Shrewsbury, Westford, Harvard, Ashland, Attleboro, and Fairhaven. We should devise our own fee schedule with respect to the number of school students a family has and a provision. These other communities that I have cited have a structure for a single student, multi-students per family, a family cap, and a hardship. I don't want to imply or inflict any hardship or for any family. However, we need to defray some of the busing expenses that the school department has. As we all know, school busing transportation fees are only going to go up for the school department. So we need to address this, and we should be addressing this now. Since I have done the research, I would be more than happy to share and work with the school department and the school committee to work in unison as a team to resolve some of these problems. Thank you for your time.
Would anybody else like to say anything? Okay. Gary, could you pick up that?
Jim, I'm gonna need the, Okay. You wanna speak about that first?
Do you need me to do something, Gary?
Just unplug the
Or
wire.
just unplug it?
Yeah, bring it around here.
Oh, you need it over there?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to. Thanks. Jim, right now?
Doesn't look like the building I walked in tonight.
It's like a balloon, a hole.
That's not where we have our meetings.
We'll come up.
Should it automatically switch over to this?
It should, yeah, let me see if I can get that.
I better move my chair back. I don't want the heat glares to cut through me.
Which one do you want me to put up, Bob?
The 50-year one?
Is this your USB stick?
Yeah, this is my spreadsheet. Actually, John wasn't here for that, and Phil wasn't here for this, so it'd be good for them to see too.
That's true.
I was thinking,
Did you switch it so your computer screen, like, you had the same issue last week?
Only thing we did was switch this morning's meeting for, returned it to,
it's connected, doing some thinking up there.
where do you wanna go to?
Last week showed had you switch your Miracast, like, so you could share it.
Only did, well, I usually just plug in hot, like, direct on.
Yeah, it's weird, so here, minimize that.
where?
I mean, this is, it should just come up, like, that's a screen.
So we can't get it up?
How about bringing it down like to screen mirroring, you know? What? Like tabbing that down to screen, no?
This is just the projector.
Seems weird. You don't usually see that anymore. Oh, he's got it on his, you emailed it to him?
Here we go.
Oh,
That's it.
mystery.
You did something. Good job.
That's it.
Thanks, Chad.
Bob?
Yeah. So, this is, and John and Phil were not here last week. And I just wanted to I updated this because, you know, when they started talking about a 50-year projection, I started looking at okay, how are we gonna afford all the different capital plans that we have going forward, and tried to put them into a 50-year plan when they were planning on doing school replacement and, you know, waterworks and things like that. So what I did is, I mean, you know, we spent a lot of our time on budgets, and what I did here was I looked at actuals, and I took the actuals I had for 3 years, 21, 22, and 23, and I, you know, looked at them, and these are the official categories that the town reports on. And I said, okay, so what were the actuals in 2023? And I multiply, and I put in a factor, you can see property taxes 2.5%. I put a factor in of how much they're gonna increase. So basically, what I've done is I've taken what the actual was in 2023, and based on the percentage there, what the revenue would be for that particular year in 2025. And then I took that process and I took it down to 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031. So property tax is obviously 2.5%. So I took the base and increased it so that for 2025, that should be the number. I also put in $800,000, because that's what we're projecting this year, for new taxes from, you know, new properties. And I increased that over the years for inflation. But I also, every year I put in whatever we did for new growth, I put into the property tax line and multiplied it times 2.5, because that keeps on growing. I put in state aid. State aid is terrible. You know, we get 1%. It's almost been flat for 10 years. So I increased that by 1%. Local receipts, you know, I used the 2.5 overhead, indirect, and debt exclusion 2.5. So for 2025, on an actual basis, that's what pays the bills. You know, $108,620,000. Okay, so then I took the actual expenses by category, you know, that we were looking at, and I came up with an average for the 3 years. Okay, and the only difference I made here from the general categories is you know, the general category just says schools. But what I did is I talked to Donna Fernandez, and I got the actuals for the Dartmouth schools and New Bedford Voc. So I separated that, so I added a line on there, and I just felt that New Bedford Voc is always high because of the rules, and so I didn't think it was fair to lump them in with the Dartmouth schools. So general government has gone up actual 6.5%, public safety has gone up 5.4%, community services 5.8%, public works is down on average. So, but Public Works, I mean, if we have a bad snow year or thing, I mean, there's a lot more variables in there. So instead of using the negative 0.3 to do the projection, I just used 2.5%, you can see on the side. The Dartmouth schools, actual is 4.8%. New Bedford Voc and other is 9%. Employee benefits, 5.1. Property and liability insurance, 6.5. So, and I actually used, Cheryl Brontes gave me the actual for debt service. So the debt service is debt that we already owe. That's not including any new projects or anything like that. And so I put in actuals for all those years. So if you can just pull it up a little bit. So I just want to get the revenue in there, if you can just bring it down a little bit more. Okay, right there. So in 2025, it looks, if we're projecting 108,620, the expenses are going to be 102,000 for the year. So free cash, projecting free cash is 6,573,000. Now, we normally have replacement capital. That's replacement capital is police cars, dump trucks, cars, all different items. But at town meeting, we usually, just the normal day-to-day replacement of capital is 4.2. So that left $2.3 million for future capital needs. Now, before I go on, the point I want to make is one of the problems with this, the expense side is we're looking at increases in actual costs in the worst period of inflation that we've had in decades. So, you can make this is like the worst case scenario. So you can kind of make an assumption that the future really won't be this bad because inflation is coming down to about 3%. But as you can see, you go to the 2026, we only have $4 million of $4.7 million of free cash. So, and if you're going to have normal replacement, you have 4.3 million. So then you get to 2027, and you're actually, free cash is $2.5 million. You get to 2028, free cash is only $158,000. So the reason I'm putting up this is, again, my goal when doing this was to say, okay, what are we actually spending our money? Because, our money on, and what is our actual revenue? And obviously, there's a problem on the revenue side. And so I didn't take it out further to look at when we start doing some of these major capital programs. But when it comes down to it, the projection is not good. And even if you go down to like 3.5, well, say 4% on some of the expenses, it's still, in 5 years, we're in trouble. So there is no silver bullet here. A 2.5 override, somehow increasing income, which is very, very difficult to do because, the revenue of the town, in all towns, is really governed by the state of Massachusetts. And, I don't give any hope to, more state funds because the state is in a lot of trouble right now. So, I don't think there's one answer to this. I think we got to look at some ways to reduce expenses and some way to raise more revenue. So, does anybody have any questions on this? Okay. I also, since the Dartmouth School's here, they also had the lowest increase in actuals. But I have a funny feeling that they have a little bit more wiggle room than some of the other departments because their budget's so big. All right? All right. Jim, you ready to start your presentation?
Gary, how did you change input? Is this me?
Yeah, so what it does, Jim, when you plug it in,
Yep.
it thinks it's another screen next to yours. So if you go to display settings and just duplicate.
It's funny, I hooked up for the first time.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Chad. Chad hit the button.
Okay,
I think.
it's not on the screen.
Lost it.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm a little shorter than the podium here, so hopefully you can hear me just fine, and I don't have to adjust the microphone. So is this good for everybody? The volume works? Great.
Perfect.
So thanks so much for having us, first of all. This is my first time in front of the Finance Committee, or FinCom, as you affectionately call it here in Dartmouth and other places. So I just wanted to say to you that since I just heard you talk about the fact that you've watched our school committee meetings, you're not going to really hear us talk about anything new. We're going to be discussing things that we've discussed at school committee. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And so with that, we were asked to present to you not only on our budget, but to talk to you about strategic planning and what's happening with our strategic planning. So we've started, so I'm excited to report that and to be able to talk about that in more depth as we really get into the details of the planning. But we're excited. We have 37 people who are part of our strategic planning team. We're happy to have Terry Ham join us, and that, I think, is going to really allow us as a school district and as a community to include multiple perspectives on where we're going in the Dartmouth Public Schools. And what this is meant to be is to really present to the community what we believe is going to be a dynamic, inclusive 5-year plan, and it's going to prioritize things like equity, diversity, inclusion. And that's going to be within all aspects of our educational community. Again, multiple stakeholders, teachers, administrators. As I said, we have select board members, we have finance committee member, we have parents, we have students, which is really awesome, and then we have, in general, we have some community members. So ultimately, this should lead to what we are hoping will be a culture of continuous improvement. And that's what strategic planning is really about. So with that, I'm going to try to, okay, thank you. So it's important to remember that there's been really good work done here in Dartmouth. Last year, you had a team of folks, educators from, again, across the school district, across the community, who worked to put together what we're calling the Dartmouth Public Schools Portrait of a Learner. And I think it's really important to talk about the fact that, after all, as a school district, we exist to support the development of our youth. And in this case, we're talking about the youth in the community of Dartmouth. So this is, again, put together with the 5 competencies that you see here. I think important for us all to think about whether it is through strategic planning or in the everyday work that happens in our schools. And so with input, I want to say the entire Dartmouth community participated in developing what we now are calling the Portrait of a Dartmouth Learner. So there were surveys done last year, there were parent groups, family member groups that were put together to ultimately put together what we have here around what are those 5 competencies. Critical thinker and problem solver, communicator, continuous learner, contributing citizen, and collaborator. As I look at this, and I want to emphasize this because I know we're here to talk about budget, but ultimately the heart of our work is right there, and it really is about educating the children in the community of Dartmouth. So one of the important things that we have to talk about is school enrollment. K-12 and what class size looks at. And this certainly has direct impact on budget. And so with any work that we do in schools, primary consideration should be to class size. We have had lots of discussion about this, both internally and externally. And I do want you to know that the community members, the families of the students in the Dartmouth schools, this is of primary importance to those folks. This comes up often, and it's something that the folks that have students, children in the Dartmouth schools feel is extraordinarily important to them. And so enrollment right now at the secondary level is projected to be lower than it has been in the past 5 years. At the elementary level, it's remaining pretty stable, and we actually did work with NESDEC, and they came in and they projected out what our enrollment should look like for the next, I think, up till 2035.
Yeah.
So I think we have a good handle on what the projected enrollment in the Dartmouth schools is going to look like moving forward. I do want to say research on class size is mixed, like all research. But what we do know is there are many benefits to maintaining manageable class sizes. The ability to individualize and personalize instruction and support increases as class size decreases. And so what I mean by that is a class of 38, although that's happened, right? In certain times, you might even hear people talk about that. Well, back in the day, I had 35 kids in my class. Well, it's just not like that today. The importance of being able to individualize and support every student is directly related to class size. And the research is out there to support that. And then if you want, you can find research that maybe minimizes that impact. But certainly if you talk to any educator who works on a daily basis in classrooms, certainly our classroom teachers, but any educator who is working in your schools, they'll tell you that this is extremely important to the day-to-day work of schools. I also want to mention that student-to-teacher ratio in the Dartmouth schools is higher than the state average. And so we are committed to protecting class size. But most importantly, we want to remind everyone, all of us here, that student achievement is the primary purpose of education. And that's what we're about. That's the heart of our work. Dartmouth has had a consistent track record relative to student achievement, and we should all celebrate that and be excited about that. But one thing we also need to think about is that, yes, our students perform at or above the state average. We're doing well, so there's a general feeling in the community that the Dartmouth students are performing well. I agree. However, there is lots of room for growth for our students here in Dartmouth.
It says here 12.5 students to one teacher. I thought the number was higher.
Well, when you look at 12.5 to one teacher, it's not just the classroom teacher, they consider every educator who works in the
So
district.
assistants.
So you won't find a 12.5 to one ratio in a
Okay.
classroom.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Special education
Yeah.
teachers who work with kids are counted into that ratio. So it's sort of like an adult to a child
Okay, all right.
ratio. We'll talk a little bit more about staffing.
Right, so I mean, we know growth can occur, and part of the reason that we're involved in strategic planning right now is to recognize that we do have room for growth here in Dartmouth, and we should be excited about that, and we should embrace it. And at the same time, understand that as you engage in strategic planning, you understand that the plan that ultimately we hopefully are going to put together and present, and it's going to be an exciting plan, that we also have to keep in mind that we need to be able to fund that plan. So there are costs associated with everything that we do. And none of it, I think, is more important than thinking about the overall positive student experience here in the Dartmouth schools. There is so much pride here in this community, and coming from a different community. At one time, there was the same kind of pride in that community, and I expect that to happen again. But you should embrace that, celebrate it. Really, your Dartmouth schools are the heart of your community, and that is so incredibly clear when I talk to people who live here. A friend of mine lives here in Dartmouth. She's always talking about how Dartmouth High School is always the busiest place in the community. That school is, I would say, almost 24/7. There are students in that school. There are adults that are using the school. There's so much promise here. And our goal, when we think through our student experience, is to provide students with the quality education that will in turn enable them to become the contributing citizens that are maybe one day going to sit in the very seats that you have right now. And so we want to keep that in mind. The Dartmouth students are the future of the Dartmouth community.
Excuse me, I do have a question, if I may.
Of course.
Previous slide, student achievement, low income percentage. What did you use for a number to get that? What was the number for low income, dollar-wise?
I'm sorry, I'm not, which slide are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about the student achievement, I'm talking about the column that says low income percentage.
30.2.
The state sets those
Those numbers?
percentages based on.
Based on what?
Based on the data that we provide
Yeah, but
on a
what's
yearly
the salary
basis.
number? What's the income level?
I can get you the exact dollar figure that it is, but the state sets a dollar figure based on the
Territory.
poverty level. It's actually relative to all states in the United States. But it is based on cost of living in each state. But
Well,
it, yeah,
I understand that, Jim, but I thought it'd be helpful if you had that, like in a
Yeah.
footnote,
yep,
what it's based on.
yeah, I can give you the
Thank
exact
you.
dollar that it is for that.
Right.
in
I
terms of
appreciate that. Thank you.
Salary, it's family income, it's not just the
No, I
individual
understand that.
salary.
Thank you.
And so obviously, we're continuing to delve into our strategic planning process. The budget's impact is critical. You've heard us talk about it a lot this year, starting back in December, and we're going to continue to bring it forward. We are concerned about the impact of the budget on the Dartmouth schools, and we are going to talk this afternoon about some of the impact that it's already had, despite us having the opportunity to rely on some of the school choice funds that are going to help us to bridge that gap this year. But you asked questions about, again, the percentage, and I know Jim is going to provide you with that, but I think it is important to note that Dartmouth High needs students, and again, we'll get you that data, but the high needs student percentage has increased from 29% to 43% over the last 10 years. Our percent of low-income students has increased from 17.6% to over 30% in the last 10 years. Our percent of students with disabilities has increased from 12.5% to 19.8% over the last 10 years. And so clearly, our kids have some significant high needs, much more so than 10 years ago. During this stretch, budgets have increased modestly. I know that you're well aware of that. And I heard you talk earlier about, the school department and spending, and certainly it is the biggest part of a town's budget, and we understand that, and we have gratitude to the community for supporting our schools, your children, our students. And so Jim's going to talk about the budget, and again, it's not going to be anything that you haven't heard.
Okay, Janine?
Question, because I see the large increase in high needs. Has the definition of a high needs student changed over the last 10 years in some way?
No, so the definition, I'm sorry to
No,
jump in,
you're
I know you
fine.
know this too, but the definition of a high needs student is a student with low income, a student with disabilities, or a student who is an English language learner. Okay, so those are the three categories. English language learner instance in the Dartmouth community, as you might expect, is very low. So we don't even have that on here because it's a very low percentage and remains a low percentage of students, but.
Brian?
Thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned a strategic plan that you're initiating. Is it ongoing now?
It is ongoing. We've had 2 meetings, and we expect it
Does
to
it
be.
start with, or does it have in it, as a starting point, an appraisal of Dartmouth students' outcomes?
Yes.
Currently?
Absolutely.
And then where you want to be?
It will have all of those, yes, that will be part of, when we are at the point where we're actually writing the plan, that will be part of what we set. So there'll be action steps, there'll be a monitoring process, and there'll be a way for us to actually see our progress to meeting the targets that
I
we've
noticed
set.
you had one of the slides, North Star was mentioned.
Yes,
Is that a consulting company?
that is not, no.
What,
North-
I've seen the term used, the Salem School District uses the same term.
Not a
North
consulting
Star.
company, no, it's actually work that came out of the group that developed the Portrait of a Learner last year. So that's language that they used.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
think
I
that,
mean,
North Star
I'm
is
looking
not
at-
uncommon.
I'm looking at, this Salem Public Schools, I'm looking at metrics for 2021 to 2023, our North Star. So it's got nothing to do?
No, nothing to do with that, no.
right,
But
so
using.
happy coincidence?
Yes, that term is one that's commonly used.
Okay.
North Star is like our shining star, that kind
So
of
the
common
initial
language.
part of the strategic plan will have a stake in the ground of where we stand currently,
It will,
and then where we want to go
that's right,
with with metrics.
that's right.
All right. And how far out are you going?
5 years,
5 years.
yeah. With goalposts along the way, so
And
it won't be.
does the community have a strategic plan that's currently working to?
Are you talking
Just-
about the school department, the school
Currently,
community? This current strategic plan expired in 2019. So we're not working off of there are still certainly things that are happening in the schools that are related to what was in the 2019, what expired in 2019, but COVID really interrupted that work. I know the district was about to begin the process of developing a new strategic plan, and I think they met on March 11th as a group, and March 12th, schools closed. And so it did slow that work down quite a bit and switch to sort of this, how are we going to accelerate learning plan?
And is there a line item in the budget for the strategic plan, what it's going to cost?
There is a line item that I would say would be under professional development.
How big is it, do you know, offhand?
How big is that budget?
How much is the town spending on
Well, right now, for this, are you talking,
the strategic plan going forward?
how much is the town spending on
Projected.
developing the plan?
Yes.
Or, so, is it $8,000? $8,000.
While we're talking about strategic plans, you're developing a SWOT analysis, I'm
Yes.
assuming, right? And then after the SWOT analysis, you go into action items to address the issues there. How far are you from having a SWOT analysis?
Well,
A month, 2
right
months?
now, just actually, I think it was yesterday, we met, and we do have a consulting group helping to lead or facilitate this process. So that's the cost that you were asking about. So we are working with a group of, again, very recently retired superintendents who have demonstrated expertise in this work. So your question is the SWOT analysis
When
piece.
will that
So
be
part
done?
of what we did yesterday was we were focused on data analysis.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we're doing right now.
Okay,
But it is a process, and yesterday was our second meeting.
okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions on this?
Okay, I don't know.
Okay.
I have one other question going on the strategic analysis. Is it going to do things like management personnel, communications,
Yes.
instructional delivery, business operations,
All of those
facilities,
things.
maintenance? And you can do that for $8,000?
Well, we're doing the work.
Yeah.
So the $8,000 is the money for the folks that are facilitating this process for us. We're actually, the 37 people that are part of this strategic planning team, they're the folks that are doing the work. So that's the me as the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, our directors of teaching and learning, some of our school administrators, teachers, parents who have volunteered. And so there's work being done I would say that $8,000 doesn't account for that work. That's work that we're doing as part of
Their job.
the work that is our responsibility. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a consultant's product. It's gonna be it's gonna be the
It's an
community's
internal
product.
product.
It's gonna be the community's product, and I mean, I've been happy to be involved with it, and it's going pretty well so far. So thank you, Dr. Save McGuire. So just to answer Mr. Bowles' question, it begins at $800 a week. So it depends on the size of the family and, you know, other factors, but begins at $800 a week. That's low income.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
So, you know, I think what we talked about, obviously, strategic planning, we're identifying ways that, you know, we're going to attempt to improve the student experience in Dartmouth. But I do think, you know, as Dr. Save McGuire mentioned, it's important to recognize that we are doing good work already for kids. We have a good school system here, and we're proud of it. So, and we thank the community for their support in those efforts. So before we dive into what we're asking for, I know last year I talked to you about similar data to this, but I think it's important. I know a lot of people on the Finance Committee are, you know, very interested in data. So hopefully you'll recognize some of this, and it's changed a little since last year. So what we've done here is we're comparing Dartmouth to other school districts. So first, we're comparing them to all districts within a 25-mile radius. That's just a blanket comparison. There are 30 districts within a 25-mile radius. Gives you an idea of the region and what's going on in the region. The DART districts are districts that are identified by the state in terms of measures like we talked about, low income, and the needs of students, the size of the district all come into play, and it produces a list. And we have 12 districts that that you know the state identifies as comparable districts. So we compare ourselves to those, and then obviously the statewide, there are 322 districts reporting to the state, and we're comparing ourselves to those. So this is overall spending. I'm going to talk about other things as we go, but this, as the first one here, is our overall spending. We're 14% below the districts within 25 miles. So $2,969.72 less per student than the districts that are within 25 miles of us. We're ranked 25th out of 30 of those districts. The DART districts were almost right on average. We're $228 less, and we're 6th out of 12. In terms of the state, there are only 52 districts below us on the list. We're 270th of 322. We're 13% below the state, $2,700 and change below. Just to give you an idea, that's $9 million below the state average is what we spend per, you know, if you extrapolated it out. We were 266th last year out of 322, so we've actually fallen back a little bit, which isn't a good sign, I don't think. So teacher spending.
Can I just, the Dartmouth's per spending?
Would you like to go back?
Yeah, just go back for a second.
Sure.
So we have 132 students on school choice.
Yeah.
So that hurts that number.
Hurts the number?
Yes, because you divide in the total budget by 132 students.
This is how much we spend in total divided by the total number of kids.
Right, but we have school choice kids in the 132, so.
I don't understand why that would impact these
Well,
numbers. So this is the total amount we spend.
I understand that, right,
And then
Right.
divided by the number of kids we have here.
right.
They're included, they're kids that we educate, so they're, you know, Dartmouth students, so they're included in this number.
But what I'm saying is if you didn't have the 132, the Dartmouth per student would be higher.
I mean, this doesn't factor in, if you're talking about the revenue that we receive from them, this doesn't have anything to do with that.
Well,
so.
you know how I feel about school choice. I mean, again, I watched the school committee meeting, and the comment was made that school choice students aren't costing us any money, any extra money, other than toilet paper and a few books. And I think the variable cost of these students is higher than $5,000.
Okay.
But, so if you said, okay, if we didn't have school choice, we would have 132 less students, so that would drive that Dartmouth pupil spending higher.
I don't think anybody at a school committee meeting said that that's all
I
that they
I
cost.
believe it was said.
No, I don't think so. But at any rate, I mean, we have school choice students, we educate them.
Okay, I'm just saying that,
In the end, you'll see as we go on in this budget that it's been a critical component to actually maintaining our educational system for this year, so
Okay.
I'll show you that in a minute. So teacher spending,
I just want to mention.
Yeah.
Our school choice students are at the high school.
Yes.
So I just want to
Yep.
just make sure that's clear. That
Yep.
those students are at the high school level, and so that doesn't have any impact on pre-K too.
okay, I agree, yeah.
All right.
May I make an analysis for me? If you extrapolated the school choice money and the students, wouldn't that equal out to say where you're at now, Jim? If you extrapolate all those, the monies and the student, would that get you back down to minus 14% variance?
oh,
Why wouldn't it? If you
we're
extrapolate.
gonna make up
I'm just trying to get-
14% of our budget?
No, that's not the question I'm asking. Bob was suggesting that if we didn't have school choice, the average would be going up. you
Okay,
know, with
so
student
we might
spending.
be like 12%
Right. so if
below
you
the state
right,
or
in other words,
something like that.
Right, so if you
Yeah.
extrapolate all those variables, it'd probably get you down to where you are
I don't
staying
know.
right now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could try and figure that out, but, I mean, it's not gonna change the fact that we're way below the state average. We're one of the
Yeah.
lowest spending districts in the
Right.
state.
Okay.
We would be without the school choice students or with the school choice students.
All right.
If we chose to say, okay, well, we're not gonna include preschool in this,
Yeah.
we could pull them all out and
Well, that was-
do a
that was-
different calculation.
That's what I was
but-
trying to get at.
Yeah.
If you took all that out, it'd be the same thing,
Yeah,
regardless of school choice or not.
yeah, I mean,
That's what I was getting
yeah,
at.
I don't think it would have.
But if you did that, it would not be accurate, because now that would cause, you're comparing it to everybody else within the state that are keeping those numbers in their numbers. So now you're causing it to skew even more.
Right,
If you compare it, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just talking about getting back to is.
yeah, I mean, most districts in the state
No, I-
participate in the school
I didn't
choice
say
program.
on a comparable level.
Yeah.
You'd have, right, you have to do the whole, for everybody, that's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
So, if we look at teacher spending, hasn't changed a whole lot since last year, a little bit here and there. We're 5% below the districts within 25 miles, 17th out of 30 districts. The DART districts were actually above the average by $230. And in the state, we're 4% below the state average, 196th of 322. We were actually 196th last year, so we didn't move in terms of teacher spending. Obviously, teacher spending is our biggest category. That's what we do. Insurance and benefits, this has changed a little bit. Of the districts within 25 miles, we're 39% below the state average, and spent 28th out of 30 districts. We were 30th out of 30 last year, so we're 28th out of 30 now. Of the DART districts, we're 19% below average, we're 12th out of 12. And in the state, we're 308th out of 322. We're up a little from 316th out of 322. I do want to recognize for sure that we're appreciative of the efforts that I know Mr. McGinnis presented to the Select Board recently, a plan to increase and improve the health insurance offering in town. We're very supportive of that. We have a problem in terms of being competitive and recruiting and retaining staff. It's been a problem for some time, and I think any efforts to improve the benefit package, we certainly support and are appreciative of.
Janine? Janine?
What is your teacher turnover rate and not counting retirements?
I don't have the number. It's mostly it's particularly evident in the lower income positions. So what we call education support professionals. Some people might remember that they used to be teacher assistants or paraprofessionals is another name for that type of job. Our custodial staff, our food service workers, those positions are really the positions that struggle the most with the benefits packages, and as a result, we get the most turnover. But our teaching staff, I mean, there is some turnover, but it's less, certainly less a percentage than those other positions, for sure.
Thank you.
So, administration spending, of the districts within 25 miles, we're 37% below average. We're 27th of 30 districts. Of the DART districts, we're 12% below average, 9th out of 12. And when we compare ourselves to the state, we're 33% below average. We're 296th in spending out of 322 districts. We've actually dropped down quite a bit. Well, we were 288th last year. We're down to 296th in the state. Operations and maintenance spending of the districts within 25 miles, we're 45% below average. We're 27th out of 30 districts. In the DART districts, we're 30% below average, 11 out of 12. And as compared to all districts in the state, we're 39% below average. We're 310th of the 322 districts. We've actually dropped back a little bit too in that. We were 307th. I think that this is important just for everyone to be aware. I mean, there's some impact on our operating budget, obviously. We do the best we can with the buildings we have. I think we do a good job maintaining them. I'm proud of the work we've done, and I'm finishing up year 13. I think we've done a lot of good work to maintain these buildings. I want to continue to do that. We do need to make sure that we continue the capital improvement process with those buildings so that they don't get to the point where they're in dire need of replacement. We do need to think about the long-term implications for the community, but we also need to think about the day-to-day and the smaller capital projects as well. So we are obviously not spending a lot on those buildings. Pupil services spending, so just a reminder, because this one, all the other titles kind of make perfect sense, but for some reason the state lumps this stuff together. Athletics, music, transportation, our nursing offices, like the health offices in the schools. That stuff is all in pupil services. Of the districts within 25 miles, we're 4% below average. We're 14th out of 30. We're 7% above the DART, 5th out of 12, and we're right about average, in the state, $9 off of average. 148th out of 322, pretty consistent with last year. I too am concerned about transportation. It's, a big expense for sure. We've talked about it before, with you folks. We are the third largest town area in the state, and I think that influences our costs significantly. I would say that also in this category, I think it's important to note that we consistently have championship music programs. We have very strong athletics programs that we offer, including every team this year has made the state tournament, which is awesome. And lots of other student activities for kids that are really successful. So, I think we're doing the best we can with the resources we have. So, I won't dwell on this too long because,
I just
go
want
ahead,
to
Terry.
make the comment that the athletics and music program that you talked about are pretty heavily funded by parent support groups, is that correct?
We are very fortunate that we have very active parental support, for sure. Yeah, we couldn't do it without.
$5.
This doesn't reflect any of the money that they raise, and, no, we're very appreciative of the community support for those groups, for sure. Yeah, we wouldn't be where they are. They certainly wouldn't be winning national championships without lots of people supporting, outside of this budget. But we do what we can for them.
Okay, Janine?
Oh, yeah.
You've presented a lot of data that shows, the variances, obviously, in spending between any number of other towns and districts, et cetera. And of course, you've made the message very clear that it's below average, maybe below average for the most part. We all receive that. But what I'm not seeing is the performance of the students below average? I mean, is it 79% below average? Is it 20% below average as compared to all these other numbers? Because I don't think that's true. I avidly watch school committee meetings and see everybody's, pride and what the students are doing, and they're doing a lot of great things. So I think you're spending your money well.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would be proud of that.
I agree. And
Versus
I was gonna get
comparing
to that
myself
point.
to
I know,
every other
and
town.
I know,
I was gonna get to that.
Jim is always talking about that, like you're getting, I think I've heard him say, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. Your educators are doing amazing work out there. That is not in any way up for debate. There is great work happening in our schools. As far as student achievement is concerned, student achievement here in Dartmouth is above the state average. It's slightly above the state average. There is lots of room for growth here when it comes to student achievement, and part of that is going to be connected to the work that we're doing with our strategic planning team. And so, yes, I think we have 51% of our kids and of our students in ELA are either meeting or exceeding standards, but you have maybe 49% who still have a little ways to go. So I think that's important for people to recognize. So there's great work going on out in this community, and there's still great work left to be done.
I think it's important to add that if we keep squeezing the budget every year, as we have been, that those numbers are going to eventually reflect that. And, teachers, and as we've already seen, a lot of support staff leave because there's no money for them, or they're being underpaid, overworked. And I can see that through my children and through their teachers. So I just want to make a point that I understand that the town is in a bit of a pickle right now, and that's important, but that supporting our schools is equally important. And so we just have to keep that in mind when we talk about the budget, that if we keep squeezing it, that it will reflect in our
And I think
children.
that in the next few slides, you're going to see that that has started to happen. And we're going to start talking about some of the impact that is actually affecting our schools, or will be very soon.
Thank you, yeah. So, I mean, I won't go through this slide in detail, because it's basically the summary of all the other slides, but at the end of what I was going to say about this slide was that we are getting good return on our investment, that, despite the fact that we are a very low spending district, we are doing good work with kids, and, we're doing our best. So in some ways, I think we're spending our money wisely. I did hear a comment that we have lots of wiggle room. I don't know where the wiggle room is from 270th down. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room in our budget. I've been living it for quite a long time now, and the wiggle room is kind of what we're going to talk about as we show you the cuts that we're going to make coming up. So, staff per 100 students, we talked a little about staffing earlier. I think it's important to note that that we are below the state average in every category of staffing. So when we're talking about teachers, paraprofessionals, leadership, student support services, clerical, technology, we're below the state average in every category. Again, we're a low spending district. We're way below the state average in spending, so I guess you'd expect this. But this is where most of our expense comes, is in the people that are supporting kids. Let's see. So there's been a lot that's gone on this year with this budget, and I think this is helpful. It's certainly helpful for me when I put it on paper. I think it's been helpful for the school committee to remember what we've done in this process, but, you know, we started out with, you know, we had last year's budget, $51,595,000. We had a budget allocation that we were told that, you know, we needed to come in at 3%, so that's $53,143,466. We then presented a budget on December 11th, $54,314,692. That's 5.3%. That wasn't a level service budget. That included cuts that we had already proposed. We knew it was going to be difficult, and we proposed cuts in that budget. Then the whole discussion in town became about you know, whether we would consider an override. So then, since it was, the discussion was that we would remove any cuts and we would start from a level service budget. So that's where we came in on January 8th at 6%, and now here we are back at a 3% budget. And
So may I ask a question? Where did the original 3% come from, the allocation you were talking about? In other words, you had put your budget together and then a 3% allocation was
right, it was internal discussion as we were talking about the school budget.
throughout the whole town or just within the school district?
No,
within the
yeah,
school
we're
department?
working with the town. We work, you know, we work together and try and develop a, you know, a plan to move forward, so, so that's where that came from. So, just so you know, so yeah, we're at 3%, but we're not really at 3%. We're utilizing $1.8 million, or more than that, in school choice reserves for this year, so I'll show you that in more detail. So we had to figure out, okay, what are the solutions for the variance? School choice funds, other funds, reductions. We used the combination of all those, and I'll walk you through them. So, funded through school choice. We took all of the ESSER positions that are not going to get cut. Some of them are going to get cut. But we took all the ones that are not going to get cut, and we're funding them through school choice. So this is the list.
Jim, could you explain ESSER?
Oh, okay, sure. So during the pandemic, both presidents during the pandemic had ESSER grants, which were basically pandemic relief grants. And there was a series of 3 grants that were granted to the town. A total of $5 million over the course of 3 years were granted. They expire on September 30th of this year, and we will have expended the total by then. And I'll explain a little bit about what we're going to fund. All of these former ESSER positions through, you know, through school choice. So the purpose of ESSER was to attempt to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic on kids and try and catch them up, because there's a clear impact on kids from having been home and not being in school, and then hybrid education, and then coming back and trying to catch up. And it's easily identifiable in the school setting that it's an issue. So these positions are positions that are going to continue for next year, and they're going to be funded through school choice. We have a new position proposed in the budget, a behavioral specialist, of which we you know, felt strongly is necessary. That's being funded through school choice. We also, throughout this process, had curriculum materials and technology replacement. If you might remember, we used to have $200,000 every year in technology replacement money that was part of Schedule A. That got cut last year in the '24 budget process, so we put that to school choice. So we're funding all those things through school choice, and I'll show you what that is here. So this is what the school choice account looks like. We have $2.3 million right now. We have expenses that we already fund through school choice annually. We get, just so you know, we get about $680,000 approximately. It varies depending on the students that have special needs that are on school choice. So it can vary a little, but the estimate is $680,000. So in next year, we're funding technology replacement, curriculum, supplies, which we actually moved to school choice last year during the budget cut. And then some other things that we already had funded through school choice previously, and then we're adding these other things that I just discussed on the previous slide into the school choice account. So $1.8 million projected for next year to come out of school choice. It'll leave us with $1.3 million to start in the account for the following year. Obviously, FY26, it becomes an issue that we'll have to address. Our intent, just so you know, I mean, the school committee's intent is to start that process extremely early, like almost now. We're going to start to plan for next year because we know it's going to be an issue and we'll have to adjust for that. So.
So school choice in the past, you would get the revenue, but you really wouldn't spend it. That's how part of the reason why you built it up. So in the future, it looks like you're going to be matching your income with the expenses.
Well, prior to 2020, what we did was we funded, so school choice was an extremely important development in the district. It funded our one-to-one initiative. In March of 2020, we had a few years of developing our one-to-one initiative. One-to-one meaning one-to-one computing for kids, right? Not a big laptop, but a Chromebook, relatively inexpensive Chromebook for kids. And that had all been funded by school choice previously. So in March of 2020, when all this happened and we started getting all the federal relief money, we began to spend that. Including, in addition to the ESSER grant, we also got $500,000 for technology that the feds gave us initially of just Chromebooks during the pandemic, because a lot of districts weren't in our position and they weren't ready to go fully remote for kids. So we were fortunate because we were already almost ready to do that. But anyway, so that was a good thing. So during the pandemic, we really didn't spend much school choice money because we were spending the ESSER funds. So, but previous to that, we had always used it to support technology. Now we're going to use it to support more technology because the $200,000 technology replacement that used to be, annually on Schedule A is no longer coming to us. So now we have a plan to continue that as long as we can. Obviously, we can spend $680,000 a year. Anything over that is, once we use up the savings, won't happen. So there are choices that, the school committee is going to have to make regarding school choice moving forward, obviously, and the FY26 budget is a big one.
Mr. Kylie.
Go ahead.
I could just kindly point out on that last slide, that there was a remarkable similarity between how your projection is going in the future, how it's going negative, and Bob's projection at the beginning of today also going negative. So I really think that that's important to point out to anybody who's watching this at home, that we need to sort this out, and now's the time to plan for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a one-time saving. It's a savings account. When you spend your savings account and you don't have enough money coming in, obviously it's a problem. But we're doing it and we're making it work for next year. But so a couple of the things that we're focusing on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kylie.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to the ESSER funds to clarify something. I understand those funds were to be used to, I guess, counteract, the impact of COVID.
Yep.
Was the spending of that money specific to positions, or were there other ways you could use the funds?
It was lots of different ways. So you can use it on curriculum, you can use it on positions, you can, use it on anything that could be justified as helping kids recover from the pandemic. Now, for us, We entered the pandemic with below average staffing. We did not have the systems in place to support kids, especially kids that identified with significantly more needs. And hence, if you want to look at the positions, it tells you a story. Things like special ed teachers, we have more kids with special ed coming back that are identified for special education services. Occupational therapy, reading specialists, speech-language pathologists, school adjustment counselors, education support professionals, again, those are teacher assistants. Those are like direct hands-on helping kids that are high needs. So that's what we spent it on because we had no way to serve these kids. And much of, like, particularly in special education, which is a lot of these positions, we're required to provide those services. We didn't have the staff to do it, so.
It's unfortunate, and this is just my perspective, that you did use temporary funds to add full-time positions, and you're going to continue to do that by spending the school choice funds to continue them.
It wouldn't be my preferred method, but when you have no other option, and the very purpose of the ESSER funds was to be temporary in nature. And, it was meant to, hopefully promote recovery of these kids. I mean, these kids aren't recovered. These kids aren't unidentifying as special education all of a sudden. It's not happening, so.
And how do you measure that?
So, do you want to talk about identification of special ed kids?
Well, we have seen, and Dartmouth is no different than communities across the state, actually across the country. I mean, this isn't something that's unique to Dartmouth, what's happening in terms of the increased needs of the students in our schools. As far as identification of special needs learners, when you think about it, we had some kids who really didn't have the opportunity to interact socially for a couple of years. And so what we're seeing in our schools right now, and again, not unique to Dartmouth, is our very youngest children entering our schools and being identified as having increased needs. And therefore, that turns into increased cost for special educators who we have to provide to support those children. Other ways that we're identifying students who need additional needs, you look at the reading interventionists that Dartmouth hired, and I think that was a great move because now the state has moved to a new process for identifying students through a dyslexia screener. And so because we're finding increased numbers of students, again, not unique to Dartmouth, but here in Dartmouth, we're finding a number of kids who have for a long time gone unidentified as being dyslexic. And so the state introduced this. This comes with an increased need for folks to be able to support those children.
I think my question was a little confusing, and I
Okay.
apologize. It was more specific to how COVID increased the special needs.
Well, I think, again, you're seeing that. Some of what I just talked about, I think, is COVID-related. So, and it's had lasting impact. The social emotional needs of students has increased. And I think that, the federal government, I think, had the right idea to give us some additional funds to support our students. But what I think is missing here is the forethought about the fact that we're not going to fix students with a year's worth of social emotional support. And now those very adults that are supporting those kids, if indeed it comes to that, those would be the folks that we're laying off. And so now those adult supports disappear in your schools, and those are the folks that are supporting kids every day, in addition to teachers. Thank you.
The orange line is the special ed line,
Yeah.
by the way. That's
Right.
it.
So-
You can see how it's continuing to go up a little more than 3% during that time.
If you just do a straight line projection of the total budget out to, say, fiscal '27, it's going to be $60 million roughly, give or take. Are the main drivers of that increase special needs plus salary plus benefits plus,
Union contracts.
It's a driver. I don't know if it's the main driver. I think.
I guess what I'm saying, what are the main drivers of the increased costs? That it could be as high as 60 million total budget by the end of fiscal '27.
Mr. Kiley's been doing this for a really long
Let me show
time
you.
when he talks about finances, but we are in a human business.
No, I
So,
understand.
Yeah, let me show you. So, I'll get there in a minute. So in terms of the Atlas, so we have a program that we run at the high school for students who have not graduated high school, that are special needs students. Anyway, it's a very successful program, but their supplies, we're taking out of ESSER for a year. We have summer school programs we're gonna take out of the remaining ESSER funds. So the ESSER funds expire in September. So those are gonna come out of ESSER for this summer. And then a maintenance position, we're actually going to change a maintenance position from half-time to full-time and pay for it through the school lunch revolving account. It's a necessary position for us for school lunch.
I have a question, if I may, Jim. Getting back to the ESSER slide, speech language pathologist, school adjustment counselor, are these full-time employees? And could you just give me a little, say, job description on what a speech language pathologist would do and a school adjustment counselor would do, please? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. These are, just so you know, every one of those positions is a full-time
Okay,
FTE.
good.
So a speech, and when you think about ESSER funds and how they support students and how it's related to COVID. So I think this goes back to your question. Many of the students, again, our youngest learners, are coming to us with speech delays. And so the responsibility, the job of a speech language pathologist is to provide direct service to students who need that additional support in order to close that sort of gap that we're seeing. And we've definitely seen an increase. Again, not unique to Dartmouth. This is something that's happening across the state and across the country, and I would probably say internationally as well, since, again, COVID affected all of us. And so that's what the role of those folks would be, and they'd be directly tied to a student's IEP, individualized education plan.
All right, and the school adjustment counselor?
The school adjustment counselor are those folks that we're talking about that provide direct social, emotional support to our students. So in Dartmouth, sometimes they're referred to as school as outreach social workers, but their outreach is really within the school. So they're working directly with our students who are experiencing difficulties, and then they're working with families to help connect them to needed services.
I want to add that, like, the counselors that you were just talking about, the outreach workers, I've pulled on them for multiple reasons, and they are really important. And to not have them in the school system would be an unbelievable loss. And that's when you see more violence happening in school, and you see more social, emotional things that aren't being sorted out. And my child doesn't have an IEP, but I was still able to pull on them and reach out, email them, I'm having this problem, can you please work with us? And they certainly did.
Thank you for
Even without
sharing
an
that
IEP.
personal story, because we're seeing kids come to us with increased anxieties, and our school adjustment counselors are working directly with those students to help to coach them so that they can be successful in school and at home, but certainly in school.
Thank you. So I think we're on reductions. So we didn't want to cut services, but we understand that, we're using one-time monies to fund recurring expenses. We don't love that idea. The school committee certainly doesn't love that idea. We have made the school committee has not voted on this budget, by the way, yet. But we've made the proposal that the following reductions take place. So the ESSER nurse, so we had hired a nurse during the pandemic. That position will be eliminated. There are 2 teachers at the middle school that were funded through ESSER, one providing special ed services and one providing acceleration services. Those will be reduced. The 3 elementary teachers at, so basically affecting class size at the elementary level, a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, an elementary specialist, the secretary to the superintendent, and the middle school secretary, which was a .6, not a full-time job. So all of those positions are positions that we have targeted for elimination. Again, school committee's not at this point voted on that, but those are our proposals. I will say that we're trying to do this through attrition. So if we have a resignation or retirement, we're attempting to do that. At this point, 5 of the 11 positions are through attrition. So there are 6 that are not. So that's where we are with those.
I just want to because I think it's important to say that, like, every position you see up there, there's a person on the end of that position. There's a person that currently holds that role in the Dartmouth Public Schools and does really good work for kids. And so when I hear, and Mr. Govin, no disrespect, but that's not wiggle room. I mean, those are painful cuts that are going to have impact in your schools. It's going to have impact on the services that we provide kids. It's going to have impact on climate and culture. It is absolutely every one of those people, because those are people. They're listed as positions, but they're people who provide valuable service to the Dartmouth community. And I think it's important that we keep coming back to that. And
I just want to address the wiggle room. I'll give you an example, like the police department. They can't always replace everybody right away when they have an opening. And I'm sure you have openings. And you always can't replace the people right away. And that's what I meant by wiggle room.
thank you.
May I make a comment
Go ahead.
before I have to leave you, unfortunately? I hate to look up there and look at reductions as anybody else does in this room. But the real elephant in this room is we need more state aid, period. We can talk about budgets and cuts and all this and all that and overrides and what have you. The thing is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, we need kind of a collaborative efforts from communities like Dartmouth that could go and put some pressure on state officials to give us more aid. Now, a lot of people dismiss that as pie in the sky, but that's the elephant in the room. I mean, you're gonna have this problem down the road. We're already seeing deficits, so that alludes right to the fact that we're gonna need an override. Now, whether that is warmly received remains to be seen. We don't know that. I'm just thinking, that's the feeling I have. This is a lot bigger issue than people in this room can solve. We need to do something. And I know it sounds like hyperbole, but I'm sorry. This has to be addressed, and it goes back to when I was on the school committee 100 years ago. It's the same problem. We just don't get, suburbs, unfortunately, are punished for being suburbs. The money seems to go to the urban, the metropolitan districts, and that's a problem, and it's not fair. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Terry, because you have to leave at 5:30 too, right? Go ahead.
And I hear what Bill is saying, and I think you have met with the representative.
Yeah, I have met
and
with,
You've asked the question about state aid, and I think the feedback that's been given is that the town of Dartmouth's tax rate is so low that it wouldn't be considered. I wasn't looking for. Yeah, but I think that the problem that we have here has to be solved by us. We have to solve the problem, because
Yeah.
if we want the schools to be funded, we have to figure out how to do it. And I think that's what's being presented tonight. I understand it would be great. I think we should have universal pre-K. Wouldn't that be awesome if we had the money from the feds? It's not gonna happen. So the problem has to be solved by us.
okay, can I just ask a question? Who's us?
The town.
The town.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the finance committee.
Say it again?
I mean, we can only recommend.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
we have no
no.
power.
Yeah,
Fine,
yeah.
we just say what we
All
think,
right.
but I think that we have to work together.
Okay,
Select board, school committee, we have to figure it out.
okay. Brian, do you want to say anything?
No, I just wanted to go back to, I think this year, you've explained it very well, and where the money's gonna come from, and it's a one-time hit. But I'm looking at going forward, and if you extrapolate the data, it could be 60, by fiscal year '27, it could be $60 million or more. So what I'm interested in finding out is the main drivers of that, and then what can be done. I mean, hate even using the word, but I mean, what can be done to ameliorate or slow it down? Or, I mean, you're also, the other thing too is, and I'll finish after this, is that you're in competition for money because of the infrastructure needs of the town too.
Yeah.
So, having said that, would I be right in saying that by '27 it could be $60 million?
Yep, 2 more years, yep. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think there is an easy answer, especially when so we're a low-spending district already. It's not like we can become, I mean, I suppose we could become 322nd of 322. I suppose that's where we could go, and that might help solve the budget problem. But what does that mean? That's not, we're doing the best we can with what we have.
I understand that, but I mean,
you know.
I think some of the issues that I was having problems with is the 3%, then it was 5.4, then it was 6, then it was back to 3. And I think if we started projecting longer term, and then negotiating with the town administration and the select board, trying to figure out where that money's gonna come from.
Yeah, yeah, and it is important part of the process, obviously, and like I said, I do think the intent, we're on Monday night probably, if the school committee decides to, gonna vote the budget. So, it's been a long process, we were initially presented back in December, but I think that we're gonna immediately jump into FY '26, because we have to, we know it's coming, and so we'll certainly communicate that, and
Just go back to that slide,
which one?
the one that shows all the positions that are,
The ESSER ones?
yes.
The school choice ones?
Right now, so those are positions that we're going to have
We
to
get
look
cut.
at
Next year.
going into next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how
Terry-
many did we cut last year?
Okay. Terry, you want
Just
to?
A bunch
one more
last year as
thing.
well.
Kind of,
Go ahead.
was Carrie done?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, when you said this is human work that we're in, it's something like that, some of what you do can be measured by student achievement, and a lot of what is required by law to be provided by the school district can't be measured in the same way, and yet it's there. So, when you think about students with poor self-regulation because of the pandemic, who come in with lack of, socialization, speech development, those are things, it's very difficult to measure those and report to Finance Committee, what the results are. And I think that this year has shown us that there's been communication issues from school to town, town to school, that we have to figure out how to work together and get the message to town meeting, who will be receiving this, kind of what we're hearing tonight, and probably in bullets, which is really hard, but some of this has to be relayed to people so that they understand why. Because I think it's natural for people to think, wasted money, you guys are wasting money. The town, they say it about the town all the time, the town's wasting money. I've been on the finance committee since 2015, I don't see it. So, but I see it from here, town meeting members, not necessarily, we have to get that word out to them.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
You all set?
Well, I was just gonna say, I would welcome more discussions with the school committee so that the finance committee can get behind these things, so we understand your budget better. And then have a frank and open discussion. If it's gonna be 60 million by fiscal year '27, what does that mean? And what's it gonna cost people to do that? And what benefits do they receive as taxpayers for supporting that sort of budget?
Thank you to the departing members, by the way, for your consideration. so, let's see, where was I?
Before we leave that, Bob,
I think.
Yeah,
oh,
you have a question?
yeah.
I got a question.
Susan?
So in the reductions category, we're looking at 9 individuals from the teaching side and 1.5 position from, I'm assuming, the administration side.
Yep.
I don't see, are there reductions being made in your operation and maintenance budget? And if so, why not? I know it's not as,
Yeah.
obviously, I know where the biggest portion of your budget is, but
Yeah.
is there any way that,
I'll tell you why, I mean, I think that's wrong. Like, you know, we don't spend any money. Like, this includes our utilities. So, I mean, we really don't spend any money. We are doing the absolute best we can. I mean, we have some custodial staff and we have some maintenance staff. But we're doing the absolute best we can with 70-year-old buildings. I mean, we're nonstop every day doing, trying to do the best we can on a shoestring budget, and that's what we're doing. I just don't, there's no room to save there. I mean, there's just none. I don't see it.
Okay, why don't you finish up?
I have another question,
Okay,
actually.
you got another question?
Semi-related.
Okay.
What is the status of the kindergarten stabilization fund?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Good question.
It still exists. It exists exactly the same. I mean, we didn't make any contribution to it. We haven't in quite a few years. It still exists. It's, I think, about just over $300,000 in it, just like there was last year.
Are you
So-
gonna put it on the warrant?
No, not this year.
I guess, why are you keeping it?
Well, it was established both by the select board and the school committee when we went to full-day K. I would imagine that for next year's budget process, when we no longer have the school choice monies to spend, it probably will have to string things along then. But we're gonna use the school choice money this year, and I guess next year that'll be another pool of one-time money. So budget recommendations, this is kind of a summary of things too on this slide, so there's a few things going on here. We're changing a speech-language pathology assistant position to a speech-language pathologist, again, just relative to kids with identified need. And we've had to add a special ed teacher. It's, again, relating to individual education plans of kids that we need to provide service for. What we removed, we've kind of talked about all this, but we've removed and put in other sources of the behavioral specialist position, the ESSER positions, the instructional materials, the technology replacement article. I'm going to jump over the Atlas one and then say high school teacher, partially funded, all out of school choice. And then ESSER will fund some supplies, and school lunch will fund some maintenance costs. So, I mean, I know, Mr. O'Hare had to leave too.
Yeah.
So I apologize then, because I didn't get to what I think he was most interested in. So this is sort of how we spend our money. Instruction includes teachers, principals, counselors, mental health supports, education support professionals, substitutes, classroom staff, instructional technology, professional development, special ed services, instructional materials, text, library books. That's 75% of our budget. That's obviously the main driver in our cost. It's mostly people. We're 80% people. Other services is the next biggest piece at 12%. That's transportation, athletics, music, nursing, also other student activities. I don't think I mentioned them before directly when I was talking about that area in the comparison. That makes up 12% of our budget. Maintenance and utilities, it's kind of self-explanatory what that is. That's 7% of our budget. Out-of-district tuition, so just in case people don't know, that's students who we can't serve in district, who have IEPs, special education needs that we cannot provide in-house. That's 4% of our budget. And then administration makes up the remaining 2%. So what we've, you know, asked for here with the 3% is 53,156,839. This is another way to look at it, just comparing it to last year. You know, our instruction category increased 2%, administration 0.5%, maintenance and utilities 0.5%, other services 10.7, largely due to the transportation component. Tuitions 5%, that's based on the state sets an inflation rate for out-of-district tuitions each year. And of course, the inflation rate is a lot more than anybody's going to have in their budget, so we lose ground there. But that we had to build in. Medicaid is small dollars. But I did want to say, yeah, we're at 3%, but we have another 2.6% funded through school choice there.
Good, Jane.
I'm sorry that Mr. Bowles left because he's the one who brought it up, but have you ever considered transportation fees?
Yes, so we had them. So there were transportation fees in, I want to say like 2008 in the town. Does that sound right, Mr. Lenz? You were on the school committee at that time, right? It didn't go well. They were instituted, it lasted 1 year. My understanding was that the town at that time came up with, how are we gonna solve this and get rid of this, and funded and gave us the money that we needed for transportation, so we didn't have to continue to do that. I'm not sure, I wasn't here then, so I joined the district a few years after that. My understanding is it went very poorly and was not well received by the community, and that's why the community decided, okay, we're gonna eliminate it. But yeah, we've considered it. We've considered it more recently than that too. I'm not a supporter of fees. We've not raised our athletic fee since I've been here. We've not raised our music fee. We've not raised our student activity fee. I think they're barriers to participation. And it's not just for a family that falls into the low income category. We make exceptions for students that are low income, right? But it may be a student whose family isn't in the low income category, but their parents aren't gonna, you know, pay for them to participate in an activity, or maybe even ride the bus. I don't know. So, I'm not a supporter of that. School committee has not been supporter of increasing fees in my time here, but it's obviously always a consideration, and I think in dire areas, you know, times of dire need, obviously you consider that.
Mr. Kiley, I'd be curious to know, like, you know, I know that he's very much a supporter of it, so I'm curious, like, how much of a dent it might put in the budget. Like
I mean, it depends how big the
beneficial it
fee
would
is,
be.
right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could put a very high fee. You might have more people that just decide to drive their kids if you do that.
That's
I don't know.
But
We
maybe if you
noticed,
see
so.
the numbers, it would.
Yeah, I mean, because, so initially at the outset, immediately when we started transporting, as the pandemic rolled on, we didn't have tons of kids riding the bus because there were so many restrictions and the seating arrangements, and they had to wear masks, and they had to be quiet and not talk, and it was very restrictive. It wasn't like your normal bus ride home where you can talk to your friends and you know, and do things on the ride. It wasn't like that. But then we noticed that kids have really come back. So most families, you know, are sending their kids on the bus that were prior to the pandemic. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to determine what the market would bear, right? Because there is a point where people will just say, okay, yeah, I'm not paying that. I'll just drop them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Concerning buses, one of the recommendations that I have is that at the next contract, you go from 3-year buses to 5-year buses because of the depreciation. In other words, once you buy a new bus, once you drive a car off the lot, boom, it depreciates. So if you look at depreciation schedules in the bus companies, the bus company has to have a bus for us, and they have to buy a third of their buses every year, or lease them, then that cost gets put into the contract, and we end up paying for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, our police cars go many miles, and they don't get the buses don't get the abuse that the police cars go. So as far as the buses, that's my recommendation. Okay. So, anybody have any more questions before we wrap up, or? Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you. It was a very good, thank you both of you. It was a very good presentation. The, we agree that there's a revenue issue, and we're certainly happy to hear that there's a strategic plan going forward. The one question I have is concerning, well, actually, there's two things concerning the strategic plan. One is, when you look at young families have a very difficult time buying a house today. So the future says that there's going to be less and less families. So that's, to me, that's going to be, that thought process has to be in the strategic plan. I mean, it's something that's happening all over the country, and the prices in the last 8 years have gone up dramatically, and it's knocking out younger families from buying houses. The second thing on the strategic plan that it should be a consideration is the artificial intelligence. Every organization in the world right now is looking at how artificial intelligence can benefit an organization. So I'm not sure how it fits into education. That's certainly something that in the 3 to 5 year timeframe should be a consideration. I mean, clearly, we have a revenue issue. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do what I did for you is to make sure that, you saw the big picture from the town standpoint. There is a revenue issue. As Terry had said, I met with the state rep, and I asked him, what he could do with two things. One, if Dartmouth could get more money for transportation, because it's one of the biggest towns in the state. And that puts us at a big disadvantage, because all the money we spend on buses takes away from money that we could spend on education. The second thing is the Chapter 70 money it's a sin. And the Chapter 70 money comes from every resident in the town of Dartmouth that pays state taxes. It goes to the state, and they give back through this Chapter 70 money. And it's been basically flat for over a decade. And so it just, I think we agree that, and I'm glad you're going to start working on the next year's budget, but it's your like expenses, and it's more of a revenue issue. And the state rep told me, sorry, there's nothing much we could do about it. So, because we had talked about that, and I actually had breakfast with the state rep, and his answer was override. He said, you have a chance to get override, and that's it. And Chapter 70 money is not fair, that's for sure, because that could eliminate not all the issues, but some of it. And like I said, there is no silver bullet. I just want to point that out, that nothing should be off the plate. There's a revenue side and there's an expense side, and between everything, we gotta resolve this thing, because we'll get through this year, but going forward, it's going to be a problem. And so, anybody else have anything they want to say before we wrap up, or if there's anything that you want to say?
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience in answering our questions. Yes, we have a lot of questions, and that will never stop. But I ask questions to be able to understand and to learn. And they may seem repetitive, but as I did mention, I watch the school committee meetings, so I try to make sure I'm not repeating something that I may have learned elsewhere. You should be proud of how well you do spend money. I may come across sometimes as being very stringent, but I'm actually pro-solution, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear that it's being, really looked at closely versus just asking for more money. It's easy to just ask for more money, but everybody in town has to really look closely at the solutions, and the school department is only one of many, and the parents of students are separate than the other people in town that may not have the money to support any increases. So I think we have to, we have to be empathetic to everyone when we think of how we're going forward. But I do thank you.
Anybody else?
No, thank
I
you.
don't agree with Janine anymore.
Okay.
Mr. Galvin, if I could just point out that our transportation contract required that the buses be no older than the year 2020 model. That's for buses for starting September 24. So we already are, by the end of that contract, it'll be 2027, sorry, I stepped away from the mic. It'll be 2027, there'll be 2020 buses, so we're already, at that point.
So
We're not
you're saying-
requiring brand-new buses.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank
Thanks
you.
for hearing us.
It's
And
good to
just
see you, and I'm glad you're
please-
on board.
Yeah, and please know that we're definitely not just asking for money. We
Okay.
are definitely and I know that from living through this budget this year, the people that are around the table making decisions and are really thoughtful about the way funds are being allocated. And it is always our intent to allocate funds that will benefit students.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me look at that. What's the agenda?
Yeah, right, we said no. Yeah. Still in
All right, liaison reports. Anybody got any reports on liaisons? No? Okay. Okay, we already approved the minutes.
Don't take my agenda.
Oh, that's your agenda? Okay. All right, so did everybody get the Schedule A? Because
So
it's not printed here.
I emailed the schedule late to everyone,
Did you?
Yeah.
and that's in draft form, so we're still working on that. We hope to
I'm
finalize
sorry,
that.
Gary, did you email it before today?
Oh, yeah, I think it was last week.
Sorry,
or
it's
the-
probably in my,
If not, I can resend it back out. But that's still in draft form. We're working
Yeah.
on a couple of other things that may adjust to that, but we have that in draft form. The warrant articles, we should have completed probably next week, and we can start working on those. I think that Bob, you said if we have any completed, we can probably look at them, whether or not they're, and then on the 25th, we have the planning board coming in, to talk about their articles.
Okay, so what's next week?
So next week, next week, I'm not sure if we have anything to meet on, right, because there's really nothing new. I was gonna give, so I was gonna give a revenue update, but that probably can wait for the third quarter. Sean was supposed to do administration, EMA and building next
Yeah.
week, but he's doing it on the 18th, because he has another meeting scheduled.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we have to really look at the schedule and what time, how many meetings we have left. That's what I'm
it just
concerned
kills
with.
me if you say we don't need a meeting
Right.
next week. That just it sends a chill right down my spine.
So the 9th,
Because we have
we'll be
letters to write and.
right, so.
Things to vote
we have
on,
We have
discuss.
no other departments to meet with. Sean is the only department that we have left. So we're pretty much done with departments. Schedule A is in draft. So we have 1, 2, 3 meetings left in April.
Is there any
the
warrants
second-
articles that we can
Any
start
which ones?
working on next week?
Which ones?
Yeah,
Warrant articles.
warrant articles.
Articles on the warrant that we can vote on next week?
We can probably get some
We
articles,
start.
yeah. We
Yeah.
can and knock some of them out.
Yeah, definitely.
In that case, please send me the Word doc of the warrant article so I can start the template for the, our vote and
Oh,
recommendations.
your motion, yeah, the recommendations, okay, so we have that already, so we have it in Word.
Okay, I don't have it.
No, and I'll send it to you. So we can go through like the draft and if there's anything there. I'll touch base with Sean tomorrow just to see if there's anything that we know that's available. I wouldn't want to vote on the budget yet because it's still
Yeah,
a
no,
draft.
that's right,
Well,
yeah,
of course.
yeah, yeah.
Anything that's, you know,
The ones we can knock
that
out.
might be able to grab
You're right, yeah.
off the warrant.
The ones that we can knock out, we can get done. So
Did-
we'll schedule a meeting for the 11th. I'll give a revenue update too. It's not, that won't take that long.
How about, should we bring in CDC tomorrow?
Buddy,
Buddy?
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because you said
I
maybe.
couldn't, we could invite him. Want me to see if he's
Well,
available?
let's get him on the schedule, because I hate to miss a meeting.
I've missed the last two meetings, but I know they got quite a few,
That's why I'm saying get him.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we
Yeah, we
are
can-
running out of meetings.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I would,
There are
I don't
quite a
want
few
to.
articles, because I think
Yeah.
it wasn't in the select board meeting.
Was
Were
it?
they talking about that in the select board meeting? Maybe it was.
Probably did, but I've missed the
planning board
last two
actually was
CPC
talking
meetings,
about
so
a
I've
bunch.
missed.
Missing a
All
meeting
those
in April.
votes.
Yeah, and if in case we need a Tuesday, I mean, we can.
We're
we can
trying
always-
to avoid it Tuesday,
Well, we're trying to avoid a
Gary.
Tuesday,
Yeah,
but we
yeah,
we
yeah.
have the ability to.
Yeah, Tuesday's not good for me.
Yeah.
So, and another update too, Capital met today, we just discussed a little bit, we're meeting again on the 11th, and hopefully they make the recommendations on the 11th, so we'll have the capital article done. So if I have it done, if I can have it done in the morning, because we're meeting at 2, we may not be able to make it for that meeting, it may have to be the next meeting, so the capital article will probably be on the 18th, so we can vote on that.
Well, just keep us in the line.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But by Monday, we should know what's on tap for Thursday if we have the meeting, but I'd like to have a meeting, even if.
Oh, yeah,
it's,
definitely.
um,
Yeah, I'm gonna touch base with, like I said, Sean tomorrow, we'll see what articles are out there that we can knock out.
Okay. Yeah, I think, the school committee, it's only a 3% increase that they're using school funds, so there's not a lot of controversy here, but, like my thing shows, 2 or 3 years, we're heading for an iceberg, and and if you go through that, if you look at the capital that's gonna be available, and you look at a rec center,
No, we're not looking at a rec center. Somebody's dreams, we're looking at a rec
I
center.
don't know how that's gonna happen.
It's not.
Because the schools eventually are gonna have to be replaced. There's no question the schools are gonna have to be replaced. And so I'm not,
They
'cause
just gave
we're-
a 30-year lease to Burgo Basketball, so he is more than willing and able to expand
Well-
his,
that's another thing, and
Area.
I think probably after we finish up, for the year, for the thing, but there's a company called Longplex in Tiverton, and they are privately owned, and they have a lot of recreations, and for the city of Tiverton. And I was thinking of bringing Parks and Rec, Burgo, and the Longplex playing.
In the same meeting?
In the same meeting, and let them all make, let them make their proposal.
Oh my gosh.
that should be fun.
We'll have a police officer here.
I'll take an extra blood pressure pill.
We'll have a police officer here. But,
Spirited meeting.
Yeah, an extra police officer, right?
but yeah, the state's in a lot of trouble,
Well, we can't solve that.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we
know,
can-
I know.
We can solve it, but I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
get
yeah.
political.
Pay your taxes.
So,
That wouldn't be appropriate.
No,
all right, anybody, anything else, or,
no.
okay?
I
So-
think at some time, and this is just while I'm still thinking of it, I would like, and hopefully everyone else would like, a presentation, report, status, and I mean more than 5 minutes, of the economic development that's happening and will be happening in this town.
Yeah, I'm sure Brian.
And I mean more than
Brian-
5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure Brian would push for that, too. So
Yeah.
that's the assistant town administrator that does that, right?
Whoever, it might be a joint
Check,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I think he's part of it. I know that when the prior assistant town administrator, he was charged with doing that, I'm not sure.
Because that's very
Yeah.
important to going forward with money.
And the other thing, and Carrie, you're new, but
I am.
2 years ago,
Keep reminding
like
her.
cannabis was gonna save us,
It
and
didn't.
it's not.
Where's that revenue stand, Gary?
Yeah, well, we budgeted, initially, even when Greg was here, they budgeted a lot in revenue, so we've cut it back.
Back that off.
Yes.
But again, I'd like to thank you and Donna for getting me information yeah.
Are those payments quarterly, annual payments that we receive from the cannabis?
Well,
do
they're,
we have any kind of,
we've gotten some, like, host agreement, I think, payments that have come in.
I was just gonna say, have we received
Yeah,
anything?
we've seen, it wasn't, it's not a lot. I think initially we had budgeted, in budget is like, in the past, like $500,000, so
Right,
we
I
weren't
know you're lower
anywhere
into
near
it.
that.
300?
so, but when are those payments supposed to be made? Are they made quarterly or?
I'm not sure on the frequency, but I think we just received one, but anything that comes from the state, like the hotel, is always a delay. So because they're collecting theirs, and then they give us it like 3 months later. So there is a delay, and I think it is quarterly payments. We do get our cherry sheet monthly. So that's the normal revenue that we get, the Chapter 70, Chapter 90 money. But I believe it's quarterly that we get. We're just starting to get them, so.
Good.
We got one, and I think that was a host agreement, some agreement they had with one of the facilities. But I believe there's other facilities open, or planning to open up, one on Route 6.
So could you talk to Sean and see if he wants me to make a presentation to the select board on that thing about the actuals?
On the 50-year,
Yeah. Because the thing is, they did the capital plan, which is only a piece of the pie, which they did a good job on. But how are we gonna afford that? So,
Why wouldn't you ask to give the presentation to the select board?
if Sean wants me to do it, I mean, I don't,
yeah, I'll
wrote it.
talk.
yeah, I mean, like I said in my presentation, the base, it's all actual numbers, but the base is the highest inflation we've had in decades, right?
No, I agree.
So
It's probably a
so
little
the
skewed.
numbers are probably lower, but in all honesty, the school department had the lowest increase in actual. So, I just did it, I didn't, I expected the school to be higher, to be honest with you.
No, that's good. Look how well they spend their money.
Yeah, no, Jim does a good job, but
They do.
They do.
when you look at the numbers, they spend almost every single dime of their budget every year,
Good.
whereas most of the other departments don't. And that's, she might have understood my thing about wiggle room, but, you budget for a full-time employee, somebody leaves, and it takes 2 months to replace them, or another example of wiggle room is you hire somebody retires, or somebody has a family plan, and you hire somebody that has insurance that's only an individual plan. There's a big savings in health because the cost for a family plan is much higher than the cost for an individual, so. All right, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, so
Second.
Carrie, all right, so Carrie made the motion, John second, all in favor? We still got a quorum, all right, okay, thank you,
Thank you very much.
thank you.